Hey, everybody. We're back with another episode of Creators Outlet. And I'm joined by my good friend, Dustin Brunell. Dustin, welcome back to the program.
What's up, Will?
How's it going?
Man, it is a wonderful time to be a comic fan.
It's always a wonderful time to be a comic fan. But if you're an indie comic fan, it's past wonderful.
We are up in cloud nine right now. I keep telling everybody, with Cowabunga Comics, I'm over the moon, and I'd rather not come back down. I mean, with everything going on, I'll just stay up there because I keep getting back up there recently. So maybe I could just hang out up there with the kid fishing. I'll stay up there for a little bit.
Yeah, float up for a little bit.
Right.
So for those of you that don't know yet, Dustin is the creator of The Listener.
I am.
And has had a wildly successful Kickstarter of issue 1. And you can now get in on the Indiegogo, which is live. Right now, you just have to search The Listener. And you can also go to thelistenercomic.com for more stuff.
Yes, sir, you can. All the cool stuff there, all the variant covers we have left are there. We've been very thankful with everything going on. The Indiegogo, the fun thing about that is it's just like going to our website. Go to Indiegogo. You can order whichever cover we've got left that you wanted. With the only exception of the Cowabunga logo cover, you can't get our exclusive cover there. You have to go to cowabungacomics.com to grab that exclusive. But other than that, I've still got a few left of just about everything. And we've got a bunch left in the warehouse. So, no worries about that if you guys are trying to get anything. And yeah, Will, I appreciate you having me on again, man. It was a blast the last time. I think we had like an hour set up, and we turned it into like 4 hours just cutting the shit.
Yeah, it was just crazy. Yeah. Sometimes they get away.
Oh man, it's a good time though. I've got the, what? I'll hang out with you any day of the week, Will. It's mad fun every time, man.
It's a lot of fun. But I want to, before we get into it, somebody gave you a nice present for Cowabunga Comics.
Oh, they did.
Related to the project.
They did. My good friend James Hull and his team sent me this incredible video. Like, so good. I just was not expecting it, and I'm eternally grateful.
And what do you say we take a look at it?
Hey, man, let's check it out. I dig it. I'll watch it a million times over.
You probably already have.
Oh, just about. And how dope is that, right? I can't even get over that. Like I said, I watch it at least once a day just because it's super cool.
That's sick. I'm telling you, when conventions get set up, you need one of those nice big concave monitors, up high behind you, with that just playing on loop.
For sure. Yeah. The issue 1, well, book one has done really well for us so far. So much so that as soon as book 1 was done, we were immediately running into book 2. Like, we were already, and I know you've read book 1. I'm not going to go into any spoilers today because people are still picking it up. They're still reading it. It's still new. But I can tell you this, in March, you'll have book 2 in hand. So, I'm really excited about that. Book 2 literally picks up right after book 1 leaves off. And going forward, the title for book 2 is When Winds Weep, which references is the hounds that Addie keeps in his company in the first book, the winds. So like I said, going into the wins weep type of deal is a very cool cover to me. That title ties in very much to what goes into the second book.
Now, I wanted to the first time we talked, we just like dove right into the book.
Absolutely.
Like I was like so impressed with the look of the book. Like I told you, it's like one of the most beautiful books I've seen since Innovation Comics was around.
I appreciate that.
You know, it's just, I mean, it just brought me back to like all those gorgeous like vampire books.
Right,
Not,
for sure.
Not that I'm a big fan of Anne Rice.
Right.
Because I don't think she wrote anything that she says she wrote. But beyond that, like all the books they put out, like when they did like, you know, Lestat and
Absolutely.
and Interview and stuff, I mean, they were,
Yes, sir.
you know, the artwork in all the Innovation books were like drop dead gorgeous.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very humbling. Eric, you know, Eric puts a lot of time into each page we do. So I'm very thankful to him and all the work that he does. You can be rest assured that is immediately pulled into book 2. We are he and I are on the same page and at the same mindset with how the book needs to be presented. He likes to have, if I've thought it and I want it to be felt, that's his golden point. You know, we could work on a page for hours together, and if at the end of it I'm like, man, I'm not feeling it, you know, he turns around and he's like, okay, well, we trash it and go back to it tomorrow. You know, we'll get it to the point where it needs to be, because the listener, as you've read and you've seen, it's as much felt as it's read. Like I want you to feel all the emotions that these characters are feeling as you're going through the book. In the first book, we see a lot of Addie and we see a lot of Sonny in the first book. Nostis and Guy are kind of, you know, they're there, but you don't get much of them. The second book is they are in the forefront, the two of them, because as we left the first book, Addie was in a kind of rough situation. Well, we know that Sonny and, or not Sonny, but Guy and Nostis are not going to leave Addie in that situation. So we pick up right where we left off. But I really, I've said it numerous times before, and I can't stress it enough, that when you pick this book up, you are drawn into something. And when we got to book 2, and which will continue into book 3 and book 4 and so on and so forth, I want you to be there, so much so, because like right now we're all in this coronavirus nonsense. We can't go anywhere, can't do anything. You know, going to the movies is like just out of the question. You know, especially for me with 2 kids. You know, whether people believe in it or not, I can't take the chance with my toddler and whatnot. You know what I mean? So, one of my goals was to make it so you felt so just drawn in that you would get a good experience reading this. You know, if you read the listener, it should be in a place where you're by yourself. You have a moment, you know, to soak in everything you're getting, because there's so many nuances that if you speed through it, you're going to miss them. You know what I mean? You know, they talk about things like chess and whatnot, and a thinking man's game and this and that. The listener's a thinking man's book. You know, there are nuances to PTSD and stuff that if you don't pay attention, you will miss them, because it's something that not a lot of people experience. You know, and I'm happy that not everyone experiences traumatic, you know, things in their lives. But that's not what we're looking for. I'm not looking for happy days and rainbows and stuff in my book. We're telling stories that are a little bit on the darker side of things, you know.
Much on the darker side of things.
So, you know, we joked. The whole team has joked numerous times about splash pages, and I'm a fan. And I've mentioned being a fan before. I love it. I love 90s comics where I open them up and halfway through it there's this badass panel that goes across both pages, and it's just gorgeous art, and you get that up close in your face, and I wanted you all to have that in the listener. And we did 2 in the first book. There is one in the second book, just to show scope. But there is a lot to be said about the differences in the first book and the second book. The first book, I wanted to show you that I could take you places that have been done, but in a more visceral way. Like when you see someone get killed in a story or in a movie or anything, we're desensitized to that now. Society has made it so we've seen it, we've done it, and wrote the book on it a million times. But my splash pages aren't just to show you that visceral factor. It's to show you how gnarly the act is. It's cool, whatever, blood, gore, yeah, yada yada. We've seen it, but like I said, we've not gone into a feeling, and that's what we've attempted to give to everyone as they read these. That's why you'll never see any text on our splash pages, ever. I refuse to put text on splash pages because I feel like it takes away from the moment. It takes away from what you feel when you go to that page and you flip it over. And that's why you'll never see any of our splash pages on ad campaigns either. It's some of the best art in our books. But I refuse to show that because I want you, when you flip it, to be there. That is your moment, to see such an amazing piece and to feel what these people felt and even go, holy shit, because those moments happen. You know what I mean? And with that being said, there are times in the first book that I purposely dive deeply into these emotions. Because with my uncle's death, that's where I was at with the first book. I was in that. I felt loss. I felt, horror that this man was no longer in my life. And then it was like, okay, let's go back. And I want you to feel such a strong emotion from these pages. These splash pages especially. You've got to feel it. You've got to be like, man, that's awful. Oh my God. And it's not the blood, because the blood we've looked at numerous times, and I actually had numerous people, review the book before it even went out. And it was like, I'm not going to give you over the top all the time, but for the first book, I wanted you to have it. And I wanted you to have it in buckets, because now I can show you another side of what's going on. Action, gore is fun, but if I can add emotion and pull you into these things, then it's more than that. It's so much more than that. It's a powerful experience. And in the second book, I didn't want you to feel the horror or the viscosity that you felt in the first book. I want you to feel your heart and your heartstrings. And I'm not saying I've pussified my first book, and you can quote me on that. I don't care what anybody says.
You just want me to say pussify.
Absolutely. There is it's not that I've toned my book down. I promise you, I've not in the least. If anything, it's just as on par and just as tough as the first book. But there's a level of humanity that I want you to feel in the second book. We give you an emotion in the first book. I want you to feel an emotion in the second book. Because if we keep going in this route with comic books that we're going to this, that are happening now, we're going to get to the point where it's just, we're flipping pages. You know what I'm saying? We're just flipping pages, man. That's it. The art's cool, but we're flipping pages. Used to be when I was a kid, I cared what was going on in Peter Parker's life. I was like, man, that's a normal dude. He's got superpowers, whatever, but he's the normal guy. That's why he was my favorite hero. He was a normal, average dude that just happened to get bit by a spider, which made him not so average. But he dealt with things. The fact that he was not well off. The fact that when he tried to get engaged, he was a broke dude trying to make money. And pay for an engagement ring from a pawn shop. Those were things that, as a young man, I was enthralled by. He was a street level hero. The X-Men were cool. They had powers and all this other crap. But Peter was an average guy, which made me think as a youth that average people could be okay in this world. They're normal human beings. You didn't have to be hyper rich to have a good life, and a normal life. So with the listener, I felt like it was important to pull those feelings out of you. And with book 2, we will. I cried writing book 2. Like, I bawled. I'm not going to lie. I bawled writing book 2. And, Eric laughs about it, and he talks about it too, because of the fact that you create these characters, you become emotionally involved in these characters and what is going on to them. And that's how your readers should be, in my opinion. You should give a shit what happens to my characters as we're going through this. I introduce you to all kinds of characters. I mean, in the 28 scripts I've got right now. So there's that. There are 28 issues currently written of The Listener. All right. Before we get any further this evening, just so everybody knows, a lot of people go, well, you're a one-off. You hit great. This is amazing. Can you do it again? Done it 28 times. I hope you're strapped in. So there's a point where emotion is so much more important than anything else. Like, if you watch a movie, like if you watched Homeward Bound, okay, when you were younger and you watched Homeward Bound, and it didn't hit you when Champ and Sassy came running over the hill, but Shadow wasn't with them. Look, man, so there's just so much to be said for it. So we want to make sure that we have that. And we want to make sure that we show you that we can diversify that feeling that you get. It can't all just be pain and suffering. There's holy cow and wow. And, just the last page of book 1 is one of 3 pages I get the most comments about. And we're not going to spoil what it is, but between you and I, that was a very, let me get the next issue page. I'm very proud of how that page came out. And my goal is to have that feeling, just like emotion, every book. I can tell you this, every book we do henceforth, because it went over so well, that particular page, will be a full art page for the last book of The Listener. Every single one that comes out. Right before you get to the end, you'll have a full art page at the end, top to bottom, left to right, full art. And it's going to jar you. It's going to make you want to read the next book.
A complete splash page cliffhanger.
Absolutely. Because when we did it, a lot of people were like, is that going to work? Is that going to be entertaining? And I was like, I'm telling you, it's going to be entertaining. We just have to get the art right, and it'll be just right. And people are going, are you making posters of that? Are you doing this and doing that? And I'm like, man, I wish I could make posters of that, that page. But I feel like that page, for now, being the book is only 2 months old, is such a telling page that I can't do anything with it. You know what I mean? It literally has to be in the back of the book, and that's all it gets. We've finished all the layouts for the second book, and I can tell you the last page of the second book is going to wow you just as much, if not more. And it's not just the wow factor, whereas we were giving you so much information, those last 2 pages of The Listener, that book 2, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a lack of information versus what the information we gave you in the last book. So I'm really excited about that. It's a beautiful page, absolutely beautiful. The layout is amazing. We spent a lot of time on it. I'm very excited. I have a habit of trying to better it's not a bad habit, but I try to better myself, just like anybody should. You know what I mean? I'm not okay with it being equal to book 1. Book 2 has to be better than book 1. The writing is better. The conversation, because the way I write is I literally, and I'm writing in the novel right now as well. So it's literally like I write my comics like I write a script. And so it's hard for people to read my scripts, and even Eric, that's one reason that we work together, because it's hard for him to go to see what I'm writing, because it's literally like a novel that I'm writing for you to take a page from, which is fun because I don't have so much to do now for my novel. But there is a sense of foreboding that we left you with in the first book. we left you with a very heavy sense of foreboding. I'm going to show you this evening something that no one has seen outside of our art team and our team at Cowabunga. The very first page for book 2, the completed first page. There is no dialogue on this page, but I wanted to share that with you guys. I thought it would be a fun thing to do because we're still a couple months out, but I thought it would be a fun thing to show you guys where we're at, how it's looking, and it's stunning. Like I was floored by it when we sat down to do the work. Let me get that right now, all situated. But it's and I want that as well. I want people to know that continuity is important to us, because it's like, like I said, I love Spider-Man, right? I was a huge fan, still a huge fan, still one of the books that I actually avidly collect to this day. Mind you, I collect older copies than newer issues mainly, but I still try to keep up with the newer stuff a little bit. I didn't like how they would jump, and it would be a whole different story. We would end a page in Spider-Man, and then we'd be like, whoa. They do it on sitcoms, too. You're like, man, this is great. The story's going well, da-da-da. We're going to jump ahead 5 months, and this is what has occurred. So we're literally picking up right where the first book left off. And let me share this with you guys so you can check it out. Like I said, this is the first time anyone has seen it, which is really exciting to me. Let me go down and grab it for you real quick. There's some other stuff in here I'm not trying to show you guys at the same time, so hold on. All right, can you see my screen? Oh.
Yep.
All right. Can you see it, Will?
Yeah.
All right, so this is the first page of book 2. Now, I'm not going to leave it up too long, but I wanted to give you a good look at it. Like I said, we picked up right where we left off at the end of book 1, moving right into book 2.
And I'm already back there, remembering everything,
right?
How it ended.
Yeah.
And there might have been a few more people than they realized was there. And
yeah, it's going to be quite the proverbial bloodbath, if you will, in that particular situation. We're also getting heavily into the spiritual aspect, which we alluded to at the end of the first book. We deal with this situation that they're in, and about 2.5 half to 3/4 the way through the book, we move into the spiritual aspect of the book, which is one thing that a lot of people have asked about. Where are the abilities, the powers and stuff? And I understand that that's something that's very interesting to people, and it's very interesting to me as well. Native American supernatural stuff is very exciting to me, because my uncle was not a Christian. He didn't believe in Jesus and stuff like that. So he would tell us stories, and he would talk about things that he believed in. So that's very important, and we get to start bringing some of that in. We started bringing a little bit, like I said, at the end of book 1. We're moving into book 2 with all this really cool supernatural aspects to it. We introduced noble spirits in the second book, which I'm not going to drop any deets about all that, but we do introduce the noble spirits. We get to see a little bit about one character's, what his true intentions were, because we get left a little cliffhanger with that in book 1 as well. I'm excited to see that, people's reactions to that, because all of a sudden everybody's favorite character is Sonny, and I was like, do what? That blew my mind, like, all over the place, so I'm like, what? The bad guy? So whatever. Everybody's got their own taste. I can't help but feel for, Addie, because that's my dude. But we're really excited. We've got some other stuff going on too right now with the Indiegogo going. We're going to start our second Kickstarter, the one for Win Wins Weep, in February. Second week of February, we're going to start that up. We're doing some really, really neat stuff for that. And, it's awesome if people hear me talk about it on here. I hope they do hear me talk about it, because I had said I wouldn't talk a lot about it. So if they hear me and anybody remembers, super cool. If you don't, well, you're in for a surprise. So one thing that I've talked about recently, do you play D&D at all? Have you ever played? Okay. I've been writing campaigns for close to 15 years. Long time. Not just for D&D, but for Werewolf the Apocalypse, Vampire the Masquerade, a lot of really fun tales. And I got to the point.
Hold that thought for 1 second, because one thing you said, so I gotta grab something and bring it over.
Please, by all means.
I'll shut my cam off. So.
Well, if anybody has any questions, anybody that's listening, I am more than happy to answer any questions anybody has about the listener, comics in general, the state of indie books, anything like that. I am more than happy to talk about. I'm sure Will's got something really cool he's going to show us.
Before I put my headphones on, I know you can hear me because I got a big. But I had this hanging up on my wall since I was like a young dude.
Oh man, how cool is that? How cool, man. I used to love the handbooks. I mean,
see, now I got to put my headphones on because I can't hear what you're saying back.
I've always been a fan of the handbooks, and the art in the handbooks has always been absolutely phenomenal.
And this was just like so badass.
Absolutely.
And my cool. They sent this like in the previews pack to my LCS. He's like, yeah, I'm not putting that up because he doesn't do any of the any of the gaming stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, for sure.
And I'm like, can I have it? He goes, sure, here. I'm like,
there you go.
Woo-hoo.
Right.
He goes, well, yeah, it is a cool poster, but we can't do anything with it here. We don't carry white. I think we got for probably 5 years, there was one guy that subscribed to White Wolf magazine through us.
Oh, gotcha.
Because he was buying some of the D&D Forgotten Realms comics and stuff when they were making them.
Absolutely.
Back to our youth when it was called. It went by the initials of TSR.
Oh, right. Well, then back then it was also White Wolf. It's not White Wolf anymore, so I don't even know who's doing it now. You're muted again, my friend. Anyway,
there we go.
Like we were saying though, so I decided to do something very interesting, which is gonna, if people are paying attention to the conversation, like I said, and listening to this podcast, they'll learn a few things that may or may not be leaked any other way for the Kickstarter. I've run so many games, it's not even funny. I've done so many homebrew games, it's not even funny. So I've decided for this Kickstarter to do a listener game.
I'm in.
Oh, I know. So I've got, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite several people on, and then I'm going to, we're going to add it as a tier in the campaign. It'll be a pre-purchase tier. There'll be 3 tickets. It's going to be tickets. We're going to play for 2 hours a week for the length of the campaign. So the tickets are going to be, I haven't set a price just yet. So, but with the tickets, they'll get a CGC copy of Cover A, 9.8, and it will be a yellow label signed by the team. And you'll also get a seat at the table to play with us in the very first game of the listener. So I'm really excited about that. And there are a lot of other neat things going on with that, with the campaign we've got going on. But it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll do it through StreamYard. I'm going to see if we can't set it up so that you guys you'll be able to see the dice rolls and stuff like that. A really nice UI so everybody can see what's going on. And a week out, I will send out my my rules for the game. Mind you, it is a very short game. It will only be 8 hours long. So I'm creating pre-made characters for everybody. So everybody will have their own character to play. How you play them is your business, but you will have a background and everything else. I'm very excited that we are giving 3 tickets away. So it'll be a group of us creators playing with, fans. So, and podcasters. So I'm very, very excited about it. And for those of you that don't get to play in this particular event, like I said, I understand 3 tickets is very few. I get that. But for those of you who don't get to, there will be something else very interesting coming in the near future. So I wouldn't get too worried about not getting to play. With that being said, do you have anything for me, Will? Or do you have any questions or anything? I know I've been running off at the mouth for a minute.
Well, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to lead the conversation and then let it float out into space and let the guest talk.
Is that how that goes? Okay. All right.
I'm because y'all know I can talk forever.
That's true. But if you have questions,
because
I'm more than happy to answer.
Because I sat on CromCon 10 for almost 30 hours this past weekend.
Yeah, I missed that.
I was
I was on there for about a half an hour to an hour, I think, and then the rest of it, I was incommunicado.
I've never flown because I won't get on a plane, and if I did and I wasn't in a wheelchair, and I actually did fly, the first TSA agent that would ask me was, "We need you to take your shoes off." I'm like, look at me. I'm 450 pounds. If there was a bomb in my shoe, it would have gone off in the first fucking step.
You're a mess, man. You're a mess.
Yeah, it works best that way that I'm a mess,
Right. No, I'm with you. So like I said, I mentioned earlier, I am writing a book, and it will be out third quarter this year is my goal. Not saying I'll be able to stick to that, but I'm trying. That is my goal to have it out.
Is that the novelization of The Listener?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Because I do realize that a lot of people love a good book, whether a comic book or novel, however, what have you. And not all of them like both formats. You know what I'm saying? So I want to open up the listeners' fan base to another group of people. And I promised I would when I started doing this to begin with. I was like, you know what? And my grandmother really wants to read it, but she's not a comic book fan. And I was like, you know what? Let me put it together, and then other people will be able to enjoy it as well. So
I actually own some real books.
There you go. Yeah.
This is a pseudo. I started reading this probably 10 years ago.
Right.
And I only get to the middle because I'd read a little bit, but now it's even worse because the print is so tiny.
Oh gosh. Right.
But this is about one of my favorite writers in my teenage and 20 years.
Oh, cool.
Before he went slightly batshit crazy, and that is
we're all a little bit. Oh, well, there you go. Now I gotta break into this. Speaking of Alan Moore, so earlier before we started the podcast, you and I were talking about comic books, okay? And we were talking about books that we have. I have the first appearance. I have a 9/8 House of Secrets, first Swamp Thing. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful book. Absolutely stunning book. So funny enough, when we opened,
can I come over and play now?
Right? We opened. You don't fly, man. We have to drive.
I just want to touch it.
Right. So when we opened our comic shop, our brick and mortar, my wife and I buy a lot and I sell a lot, and it was like I had a guy that was like, "Hey, look," he brought in 2 binders, 2 black binders, comic book binders. I'm not a fan of them. Okay, to put that out there. I'll preface that in case anybody's like, "Oh, he puts his books in." I'm not a fan. But anyway, he brought these binders in, and he was like, "Hey, man, I'm looking to get $5,500. My first thing is, bro, who on earth do you know keeps $5,500 just laying around? You know what I mean? That was my first thought. You got to remember, I was 30 years old opening a comic shop. Every dime that I had gone into it. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, well, first off, what do you have? Because then the dealer in me is like, what's he got? Can I make my money back? You know what I mean? We all know the speculation market, the flipping market, and everything else. So he whips out issues 7 through, in these binders, 7 through 100 of Spider-Man. Volume 1, ASM. Hulk 180, Hulk 181. There was oh my gosh, there were so many books. It was ridiculous. And there was the, House of Secrets in there. And I was like, I got to make my money back. You have to understand the store's only been open. I'm real honest with people. I was like, the store's only been open a month. I just threw every dime I had into it. I can give you $3,000 cash. That's it. You know what I mean? And because that's all I had. I'd offered more, but that was literally at the time all the money that I had. And he was like, okay, I'll take it. So I locked the door, flew to the bank, came back, bought the books, literally had to sell them all. Oh, there were 3 129s in there, ASM 129s in there as well. And that's how I got my ASM 300. I'm a huge, wait, which arm is that? I'm a huge Venom fan, like old school, Venom fan. Before all the shenanigans that started in, the 2000s and whatnot. I'm a big Eddie Brock fan. And that book seemed to be the most elusive book to me. Like a nice copy, like a really, really, high-end copy was really elusive. And a buddy of mine came in and he was like, I'll give you a 9.6 ASM 300 and $175 for a 129. And I was like, sold. You know what I mean?
Because I had 3 of them.
Right. My infinite wisdom, though, I didn't save any of them. I sold them all. So I sold both the other 2. But at the time, I've been open a month and I've seen 3 of them. You know what I mean? Or 4 of them probably at that time. And I dealt with so many people that dealt in high dollar books that I was like, it'll come around. It eventually will come around again. I'm not a huge Punisher fan. I'll see it again. Funny enough, out of all the books I've seen come back around, that one hadn't been one of them, into my possession anyway. But I sold the Hulk 180, sold the Hulk 181. But anyway, that's where that, first Swamp Thing came from. And I kept it. I was like, I'm never going to find this book in this quality without breaking my bank. You know what I mean? So I was like, I'll snag that. There was Ninja Turtles 2, 3, and 4 first prints in there too. We kept those. But then, you got to remember, those books, though, have not shot up in value till very recently, past 2 years maybe. Before that, they were still within reach for a normal person. Now Turtles 1 is going for like
a normal unmarried person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just got to throw that out there because, if you got a girlfriend or a wife, there's a good chance she's not going to let you spend half your paycheck this week on a single comic book.
So I got to say this because I don't say it enough. I try to say it as much as I can, but I'm eternally grateful for my wife. I left a 6-figure job and 5 years short of retirement to open my store. And I took all my savings and everything out of my house to open my store. So we didn't have a loan when we opened it.
With you saying that, I just had a vision of you swinging from a noose on the tree in the backyard or something.
No, man. Heather was so helpful. I mean, she literally was there day in and day out, She helped me put the wood floors in. She helped me redesign the interior of the building. I mean, my wife was doing her 45, 50 hours a week managing a company and then coming in after that every day and busting hump with me to make sure this place stayed open.
Wow.
And I was, like I said, I'm eternally grateful. I'm eternally grateful now. I mean,
I need one of them.
Right, man. Hey, look, if she had a twin sister, I'd hook you up.
Because there's lots of boxes here, and it's tough for a cripple guy to get to all of them.
Right. I can imagine.
I busted out in like the last 2 weeks. I busted out like 2 rows. There's literally, I'm literally from what you see here,
right,
which you can't really see, but it goes from the wall behind where my monitor is, so where my hand just disappeared to past that pole. So it's like a good 9 feet.
Yeah, you got some boxes there, man.
And they're stacked about 5 feet high, 7 rows that way. Then there's 5 more rows over there.
Man, I bet you've got some cool stuff in there, though. I bet you've got some cool stuff.
Well, I just showed you that poster.
Absolutely, that's what I'm
saying. I still have the original Peter and MJ wedding poster.
That's too cool.
It's
90s, right? Early 90s.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's not in the shape it was in, but
still cool, man. You went mute again there, Will.
I would buy like weird stuff at the stores.
Right. For sure.
Once in a while, just like, toy speculating.
Yeah.
This was like long, and I worked for Toys R Us.
Awesome.
KB Toy. Oh, they hated me.
Oh no.
Not that I'm insensitive to people, but I am always a sarcastic smartass.
Not everybody's got a filter, my friend.
I'm Scotch Irish. I can't help myself.
Right. Not everybody's got a filter.
So I used to work third shift around Christmas time for Toys R Us.
Right.
None of the managers all hated me because, they would snap their fingers and I wasn't asking them how high I should jump.
Oh, for sure.
I'm like, yeah, I know. I was like 19, 20, between 19 and 22.
Right.
So they'd be like, rah, 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 rah. I'd be like, yeah, let go of my ears. I know my fucking job.
Right.
But there was a new manager that came in from a different store that took over the third shift crew.
Right.
He was a nice guy, nice and mellow. During the breaks, he'd sit around, chat with the girls. And he was homosexual.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I'm like, I don't care. They know more about design and stuff than I do. But one night, with my brain just reacting, he was talking to the crew about how, various places he had traveled and things he had seen. And it was all very interesting.
For sure.
And he goes, and then the summer after, I went to Paris and I just blurted out, gay Paris.
Oh no.
You're fired. I'm like, okay, see ya. I'll be back in about 6 hours for my check.
Right. Oh man.
And I'm like, I didn't say it to be mean or anything. I'm just like, damn.
Yeah, well, I mean, the filter's good sometimes.
Yeah. But I mean, I found lots and lots of trade paperbacks.
For sure.
And hardcovers and
there you go. You got all kinds of cool stuff in there, man. Those
big fat books.
They need to come and people need to check out your box openings, man. You find all kinds of cool crap in there.
The Complete Bone from Jeff Smith.
Laying around here somewhere.
Man. That'll knock somebody the hell out.
Oh, I know.
But it's still one of my favorite stories of all time.
I'm fairly certain one of those has come across my head at some point.
Probably. I never got the hardcover, but I settled for the soft cover because the soft cover was $40 on its own.
for sure.
when it first came out. But and I'm excited to see his animated series that's coming to Netflix.
And how cool is that going to be, right? So I mentioned the Kickstarter earlier, and all the cool stuff you're showing is making me think about other things that I wanted to mention and I forgot. As we're getting through to the listener book 2, When Winds Weep, I had a friend mention to me, he was like, Dustin, you guys did 8 covers for book 1. 8 covers. And to me, that number was inconsequential. Outside of the monetary value or the monetary or the amount of money we put to each cover, it was inconsequential. I had artists that I wanted to work with. Those were the people I wanted to bring in. You know what I mean? And for the most part, with the exception of guest artists, those people are all with us still. In one format or another, whether they're doing posters, which is new. We didn't do any posters for book 1. So book 2 will have posters and all kinds of cool swag like that, like 11 by 17 lithographs and stuff. But I'm cutting down the amount of covers because somebody said to me, they were like, Dustin, some of us are completionists and we want to get all the covers. But if you have 8 covers, it's difficult for us to do that. And I said, okay. So what I've done is I decided to take the money that we took in book 1 for the additional covers. We still have a fair number still. I'm not going to cheat myself or the team out of how many covers I think we should get, but I did cut them out. I cut out a few. And, but just in case anybody's wondering, Adam Fields is still doing a cover. Marissa Pope is still doing a cover. Gabby's still doing a cover. Kyle Willis is still doing a cover. All the team, the original team, is still doing covers. So I don't want anybody to worry about that. All those covers are coming out, and they're amazing. David Acampo is doing a cover. I mean, just beautiful stuff is coming. But I decided to take the extra money and put it toward other things, other cool things that we can do. Like running a D&D game, or not a D&D game, but a game of the listener, live, and making sure people have the time to do it, and I've got a bunch of really cool ideas that we're doing with our marketing team and stuff like that for the second book. I didn't do, what are they called? Stretch goals for the first book. I had no idea the first book would do as well as it did. I was excited. I just wanted to break even. That was my goal, and to be able to produce the second book, but for it to do as well as it did, it was just like, okay, well, now we need stretch goals. I was ecstatic just to meet my goal. You know what I mean? So now there's going to be swag involved. There's going to be, some other cool stuff. This is also a first because I like you, Will, very much. So I'm going to tell you about something really cool that, we haven't really talked about at all. Like at all. So the only people that are hearing about this, right now are the people that are on here. And I will not answer questions about it before the Kickstarter. We won't talk about it again. So take with it what you can.
Action figures?
I'm not talking about those yet either. So you're on my Facebook. You saw what I asked everybody about the other day. Is there a company? You can go back and look through it. I asked about a company and nobody answered me. So that was a good hint to what's coming on for that on that side of things. But I am doing a limited 30 print book run. It's going to be a higher tier cover for the list. Not cover. Higher tier pledge for the listener. Much higher tier than what we normally would do. My highest tier right now was $100 sketch cover, which is actually being worked on right now and is absolutely stunning, I'm sure, by Kyle Willis for Lorenzo Flores. But it's going to be higher than that. Do you remember in the 80s, early 90s, when Polito put out leather-bound books? Do you remember? And he also put out fabric-bound books, and he did some really neat stuff when it was Coffin Comics back in the day.
You mean Chaos?
Or yeah, actually, yeah. Well, it's Coffin now, right?
It's called now. It used to be Chaos.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because he was doing Lady Death, but this guy was involved.
Absolutely. So I love Hermes. So anyway, I am doing a 30-book leather-bound run, and it's going to be incredible because it is not book 2 of The Listener. It's involving The Listener, but it is not book 2. And like I said, we're only doing the 30. Outside the comp copies and the thank you copies, there will be only a 30 print run. I'm very excited about it. And as we get closer, we'll drop more details about what they are. You're going to want to get in on them because it's, oh my gosh, it is, for lack of a better word, my knowledge is what it is. Kyle and Kevin and Eric, they've all joked with me about the burden of knowledge. And the more I heard about the burden of knowledge and the more I wanted to talk about and the more I wanted to share, that I realized I couldn't, because I wasn't trying to spoil what we were creating by giving away too much. But I got to the point where I was like, guys, I gotta do it. I gotta give these people something fantastic. You know, they were like, well, you're just starting and the book 1 did great. Let's get book 2 out. And I was like, I have to do something fantastic. It has to be better every time. And I will say this. Everything that you've mentioned in this interview, I will do for this next Kickstarter. Now, if people are paying attention to the things you've said or not is on them, but everything you've mentioned will be in this Kickstarter. And I'm very excited about that. And I can't tell you more because people will be upset with me and beat me up. But because they'll be like, we have all your scripts. We don't need you anymore. You know, so there are so many fun things that as a creator, you know, we see artists and we see the things they've done, which a lot of people don't know is I was in art for many years. I mean, I worked at one of the biggest museums in the country. I went to college and got a degree in design. I mean, I've always been into art. I broke my hand the second time and I quit drawing. It's very painful for me to draw or for me to write anymore. And then when I broke it the third time, it was like, no more. I physically can't do it anymore. But just because holding a pen or holding a pencil is just, it's agonizing for me. But creating something is so powerful. It's so epic. And you see all these guys and they're doing these beautiful pieces. And I'm not just talking about the listener. I'm talking about the industry in general. And even new guys that we don't even know who they are or see or anything. It's phenomenal to see these guys and they create these beautiful pieces. And I was like, you know what? I love my team. I love every member on my team. And I love the work they put out. And I know that people look at the writer and they go, oh yeah, that's the writer. They're cool. But when we go to a convention, it's like, get the artist signature, get this, get that. And I've done it. You know what I mean? I've done it. I understand it. So to validate almost to myself, not just the guy that pays the bills, not just the guy that got the team together, not just the guy that created it. I wanted to be more involved in the outside extra stuff. You know what I mean? Like I said, I do every panel with Eric. We sit down and I design every panel. And then he goes in and brings my panels to life, you know, because I use my computer to create my panels. And then he goes in after me, you know, and does his stuff to them. But it was like, I wanted to bring something powerful to this Kickstarter. So this 30 book thing that you guys are going to be able to get your hands on is every bit of the listener that I can give you without spoiling the story of what's to come. You know, because when you read comics, a lot of times you look at them and you're like, well, who is that dude? You know what I mean? Okay, so they brought in the Scorpion to Spider-Man, right? And you're like, okay, well, we know he's this and this and this. But what else? You know, all these years, we've gotten crazy different answers to who the Joker is. You know, I'm not even talking the multiverse. You know, I'm talking regular dude. You know,
It's
who
me.
is he? Exactly. So I wanted to give you guys things that could help you relate not just to the listener, but the other characters in this world, you know, because there are many, you know. I mentioned world because that's another thing we'll go into talk about. The listener is a large world where Addie exists. He is the listener. He may be the central character in this world, but it exists as a much larger thing. Within the next 6 months, I'm hoping to have the secondary book out and running concurrently with the first book, with a whole new main character in the same world. So I'm really excited about that too. We've already written the first 10 scripts for that. And then we've got a character that we introduce in the first book. Her name is Li. She's a young Chinese girl. You get introduced to her sister in the secondary book, or in the book 2, but she becomes a main character. Li will run the length of the listener, and in the future we go through a lot of things with them, and I'm very interested in people's opinions because Addie will not always be the main character of our book. You know, just as Batman was the titular character of his book, you still had Bruce Wayne, or Dick was Batman at one point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've also had Nightfall, you know, where another time when Bruce Wayne wasn't Batman, you know. So there are a lot of interesting things we've come about because the listener is so much bigger than I had ever intended. I went through a time period where, and I'm still doing it, it's insanity. A lot of people are like, hey, I've got writer's block. I've got, hey, I need a dam for a couple minutes. You know, because it's all running and it's so big. And it's amazing to me that so many people are interested and so many people want to get involved because I'm to the point now where I've created another team for this other book. And if the other book goes well, eventually there will be a third team with a third book published through Cowabunga Comics. You know, Kyle and I were literally just talking about broadening our publication. You know, so I'm really excited about that, and that's coming in the future. But action figures, exciting things. I like action figures. So I'm a fan of action figures. Yeah.
I was a huge fan of the Stargate series, both
very cool.
regular SG-1
right.
and, of course, Atlantis, you know, where we first met Aquaman.
Right.
So I bought like 2 cases of the first series of Stargate figures.
Oh, very cool.
And now at some point I will be selling them. But I got a little upset because they actually put interconnecting pieces behind the figures.
Yeah.
But you would have to open all your Series 1 figures and all your Series 2 figures.
Yep.
And then you would have enough pieces to build the actual Stargate. So you would have a backdrop for all these figures that you have now opened. And But when I bought the full case, because you know from having a brick and mortar, there's inner cases and there's the actual case, which usually is made up of 2 to 4 inner cases.
Right.
Well, because I bought that, it's at the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember the demo that the toy company shows the board of
For sure.
what, the very first version of what they're
pilot?
going to make.
The pilots? The figure pilots?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Here's one of those of Jack O'Neill.
Super cool. That's awesome.
The vest ended up being molded part of it.
Uh-huh.
And I've never opened this box. It's not sealed, but I've never opened it, even though it's like a little.
Well, yeah, for sure.
This way, it's a little bowed down the bottom, being in storage, but it's never been opened. So I'm thinking his machine pistol is there. So I'm thinking further down is a walkie-talkie,
probably,
in a Zach gun.
Very cool.
That's like a demo one. I've actually got a Jim Lee Hush set, Batman Hush set, like this big.
Nice.
And it has one of these, then one of the mock-ups of this painted, and then the final figure in there. Plus, it's got Jim Lee's signature on the certificate of authenticity inside.
Yeah.
And it also has an original Jim Lee Batman sketch in there signed.
Wow.
And I didn't realize it was signed. I thought it was just, like the Stan Lee stuff. It's like, well,
yeah.
Technically, it's Stan's signature because we scanned it in and we just printed it on the book.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's what I thought it was. And then when I hadn't opened it in, like 15 years.
Right.
Till I opened it on one of my unboxing videos. And I looked and I was like, holy crap, this is done in actual this is a pencil sketch.
Yeah.
And it's actually signed. I'm like,
there you go. How cool is that?
I'm like, and then I was thinking, I go, as much as I love Batman, I go, well, how much money is this worth now? Because this is double signed by Jim Lee.
Right. Absolutely.
What would it cost you to get Jim Lee's signature now? Like,
oh my gosh, a lot.
Well, like a few $100.
Probably.
Because he doesn't leave the ivory tower that much.
Right. Well, he just did something amazing for Christmas, man. Did you see that? He was going around and giving people sketches. Like, just giving, like Santa Lee was walking around giving people, like he would show up at their door and give them a sketch. But you had to put in for it. Like, it didn't cost no money. You put in for it, and he was.
Well, I wish I would have known that.
Yeah, how cool, man. Yeah,
I could have tripled the price of that Batman piece.
Right. Yeah, he was going around and literally he did sketches beforehand, then going and handing them out for Christmas. That was just really, really cool. So we're going to do some head sketches, I think, this time around. We did a couple head sketches on our blank covers for the first campaign. This second one, we'll be doing a few more. Kyle just sold his original art for his cover to Javon Jordan. That was pretty cool.
Well, the Indian in the cupboard painting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I figured he did when I saw that post of him holding it out. I'm like, I go, oh, some lucky SOB just bought
it. Man. Oh, I wanted it, but it was just like
piece of history.
Absolutely. I mean, painted on the newspaper the day after Pearl Harbor. I was just like, that was epic. I'm going to tell you this. He just did a cover for an exclusive cover for book 2 for our buddy James Hull and his company over in the UK. And it's stunning. It's Kyle has had some really, really cool ideas coming out for these covers. It's absolutely beautiful. It does have Lee on the cover. And it's stunning. I think it's really interesting that Kyle did Lee and Marissa is doing the older sister on her cover. So both these characters will get their first cover appearances on the same book. It's pretty cool to me.
Well, when you mentioned Lee going forward in the series,
Mhm.
it made me think of towards the end of season 3 of Cobra Kai.
See, I've not watched it. All right, everybody talks how amazing it is, and I'm just like, those were the bad guys, man. What? Those were the bad guys. I don't know.
Let me tell you, season 3, and these aren't my words, but I agree with him like 1,000%. Rylan Grant,
Right.
his statement was, and I agree with it 100%, and I've just copycatted his statement
Right.
to people, that season 3 of Cobra Kai is a literal love letter to the original Karate Kid trilogy.
Really?
I mean, parts of it, I'm crying like a bitch, but
That's okay.
if you call me a bitch to my face, you might get throat punched. So I'm just saying, but
That's what we talked about, though. That's so important, right?
so it was, it was just, you know, phenomenal.
I'm glad to hear that.
And I'm just like, and it reminded me, because you definitely, I know you're busier than hell. The episodes are only a half hour long, and there's only like 10 of them.
Oh, I'll check it out, man, for sure.
But
because
there's a character that reminded me of Lee, because it's the character in the season was a little girl from Daniel's past.
How interesting.
That you don't remember, but before he catches it, and because of who this little girl, not who she grows up to be, but who she knows in the reunion that it caused, as soon as they get like this far away from being, oh my God, and he blurts out her name, you know who it is right away.
That's awesome.
You don't know her name, but you know the scene and what happened.
Absolutely.
And of course they flash back to that scene, and it's like, I'm like, man, this is awesome.
That's too cool. Well, I take a stance with Lee as a character. I love her character. I love her character and the listener so much. I think we love all of our creations as writers. I really do. I think we have a soft spot even for the bad guys, for the monsters, the villain, whatever. And all our characters, our main characters, are long-running characters for the most part. I don't think that I remove, like you said, I'm like 28 scripts in now, and not have yet to say you'll never see a character again. You know what I mean? So you look at that, like 28 scripts, that's almost 2.5 years worth of comic books that we're ahead right now. And that's if we release them monthly, which is my goal. I'm attempting to get there as fast as I can. But so Lee, as she ages, as our comic does, our comic skips forward in time a little bit. There's a lot of explanations to it and stuff like that. But Lee has nowhere to go after they leave China. You know what I mean? So, and spoiler alert, yeah. So after they leave China eventually, because the listener doesn't always take place there, so after they leave China, it's like Addie has no explanation for this young girl once they come back to the States. So he's not just going to pawn her off anywhere, So now you've effectively got a young protege that is going to be taught by the listener. And the interesting thing is the listener is just now learning what it is to be the listener, because he didn't believe in it. He grew up with 2 generations of it and didn't believe in it. So now you've got him trying to understand himself and what it is to be the listener, and train this young girl, to live in this life that he has inadvertently pulled her into. And it's a very heartwarming thing, because Addie has no children. So it makes it a very interesting thing because he had a very unique dynamic with his father. And we hint at that dynamic in the first book. We also hint about his marriage at the very end of the first book. A bunch of other cool things. But I've always loved these writers who lay groundwork. You know, if you take an author that can put you, or a writer, and they can put you 20 books in and can cite something from the very first book. You know, Marvel and DC were great at it back in the day. You don't really see it too much anymore, but back in the day,
let's not get into what we don't see in Marvel DC now.
Well, you would get your actual, you know, book number, panel number that you could find this information from.
Yeah, they don't want to pay editors anymore to,
right.
You know, to actually research stuff. You know, well, the editor wouldn't really research it. The intern would go find out what book this was in.
Right.
You know, he goes, I know it's in this title. Just go back through the hard copies and figure out where it was so we can put a footnote in.
Absolutely. So,
and that's that was always, and we talk about it on Thomas and I talk about that all the time on OK Boomer the podcast, because all we're doing is talking about old books.
Right. Absolutely.
And him and I, well, you know, because we're two old guys that love comics, so we bitch a lot. And
I can understand that.
And one of the things we bitch about is not getting like the little editorial notes,
right? For sure.
Linking, like if there's something important that happened in a story, but this part of the story nobody saw that reads Avengers, but they saw it in say Nova Volume 1, issue like 12.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty close to it, where Angel crossed over and Beast was there. So, you know, I'm just making this up, but you know, somebody like Archie Goodwin would put in, you know, as seen in, and there'll be, you know, if there's more than one book that it pertained to, there's like an asterisk for the first book and 2 asterisks for the second book.
Absolutely.
And it's in there because people used to go and buy back issues.
Absolutely. I have 40,000 books at my house right now. I love them. That was my biggest sale thing in our brick and mortar. We'll soon be getting into that even more in Cowabunga in the future. Right now, I have the listener. I'm up to the elbows in it. You know what I mean? And that's where I'm going to stay for a while. But so as you're talking about these things, and I'll bring in some more cool stuff about the listener. We have a world, and I think you've heard me talk about it before in one podcast or another, that I believe in our world, all religions exist. Okay. So when you cross the veil and you walk over into the spiritual side of things, like heaven is way over there, you know, in Rome, you know what I mean, Italy, and then you've got, you know, Valhalla is over here in New York City, you know, and you could see them if you were standing in front of them and you were on the other side, you know, so they exist at the same time. Whereas Buddhism exists, all the religions exist. I tie in every single. I don't leave anybody out. We'll put it that far. You know what I'm saying? I mean, at one point in time, you'll see the religions clash, the faiths clash. I mean, you'll have Thor going at it with, you know, Cuchulainn at one point, you know, which, you know, Scotch Irish. I mean, nobody was cooler than that guy, you know. So he's out there in his own kilt going at it with the God of Thunder. You know, so there's a lot of cool things that we tie in.
One of my favorite Irishmen was the Prince of Ireland that was a member of the cast of Braveheart.
Right.
And I loved him because he was a little crazy, and he kept saying, "My Ireland, it's my island."
Right.
And nobody knew he was actually the King of Ireland.
There you go.
Through the entire movie.
That's a good movie, though. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
Yeah. And, of course, he used to always, look to the sky and be like, "Okay, Father, I'll ask him."
Right.
He
Well,
goes, is your father dead, or do you converse with the Almighty? Are we going to make it through this? Well, he's pretty sure I'm going to make it through, but he's pretty sure you're fucked.
There's I bring that up because of the notes that we were just talking about, and tie it into that 30-book print run that I mentioned. A lot of people aren't aware of the history of certain deities, where they come from, So, like I said, for those paying attention, I'm dropping hints as to what this 30-page book could be. So there will be little anecdotes when you first see a character, and they'll have a brief description, but there may be another place to find an even better one, is all I'm saying. Kugelain, very cool character. I bring in, eventually you guys will get involved with the Four Horsemen. You'll also be involved with the seven sins from Christianity, the seven deadly sins. And all these characters, once again, I've taken my own liberties on. I feel like there are a bunch of characters we've seen too many of the same way. I'd like to bring in, like, my horsemen are not going to look like the Four Horsemen of from X-Men. Any iteration of those characters. Everything, I promise you, and once again, this is another time you guys can quote me. None of my characters will look like another artist's rendition of a character in any way, shape, or form. Whether it's our interior work or posters, promotional work, even fan art, I strongly suggest people stay away from using palette swaps of other characters. You know what I mean? Because I am going to give you something from the bottom of my heart, and that burden of knowledge I mentioned earlier that will give you all a really, really cool glimpse at all of these characters. Speaking of that, very quickly, I'm going to share something with you before I forget, because I will. Let's go back to that folder where stuff is. Can you see that, Will?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is Gabby's take on famine. And it's nowhere near finished. She's been working on it for a little bit now, a couple days. But my take on famine is the same thing with the rest of the horsemen, is that they are spirits that imbibe a body. They take over a body, and they all resemble attributes of what you would expect them to resemble. And hopefully you guys didn't see that cover in there. It was hidden back there, Lee. Not that I was doing that on purpose.
Not at all.
So
I'll go back and freeze frame it later so I can see.
Right. Really excited. We haven't shown those off yet, so you're welcome to find them if you can. But so I really want people to have a unique view of our characters, because if you watch Hercules, by the Disney version of Hercules.
Oh yeah, the animated, yeah.
And you've got this. A lot of people have this idea of Hades. The blue, and I'm mad. I get red, and all this other jazz. I promise you, my Hades doesn't look like that. Hades will be another interesting outlier in the listener, because I believe the character to be a truly neutral, talking in D&D terms of things, neutral character. Even a lawful neutral. Is that Lou Ferrigno or Arnold Schwarzenegger?
It's Hercules.
It is Hercules. Where are you pulling these cool things from?
right over here.
That's amazing.
A good buddy of mine, David, knew I wanted his autograph, and this is going back like 30 years ago.
Man, that's cool.
And he was going to a show up in Boston, and I couldn't get out of work, and I didn't want to get out of work because 35 years of the strip club business.
Oh God.
Who wants to give up looking at free TNA that actually give you money?
Right.
Every time a friend of mine would be like, bragging, just got a great new job, and we're hanging out and they're bragging about how great their new job is. I'd be like, yeah, well, naked bitches give me money. And they'd be like, shut up, the next round's on you. I'm like, okay. I just wanted to show something quick because this might spark another thought.
Maybe.
Since we have good guys and bad guys, in basically every story. And of course, from what I've seen of just the first book, I'm sure there's good spirits and bad spirits.
There are, absolutely.
So, which made me think, because I found this poster from 2003 from Knights of the Old Republic 2, the video game.
That's a good game.
And this is the light side of the poster, because in the game you had the choice of decisions you would make, and you could stay on the good side, or if you were a favor of the Sith, you could just flip this poster over.
Man, I loved Revan. Man, I don't care what anybody says. I'm a huge fan. We can talk Star Wars for an eternity. I mean, I have every EU book upstairs in my office. I mean, I've been reading them since I was like 9 years old. I absolutely love them. Starting first book I ever read of Star Wars was The Courtship of Princess Leia. Absolutely loved that book.
I've got that somewhere.
I'm sure you do. Most Star Wars fans do. It's an incredible book.
I don't have a good Star Wars book by my hand, but I've got that one.
I have that one. That's a good book too. Whatever. That's a good book.
I think I bought this because it was shiny.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, that's fair.
But right underneath the shiny Star Wars book is Neil Gaiman Neverwhere, the prose. So
well, your extremes there.
I'm just all over the place.
Well, we mentioned good and bad demons, or spirits and whatnot. Like I said, I consider Lucifer a neutral being in our, because we talk a lot of religion with the listener, a lot. And it's because I find it's something that people shy away from. And once again, when you're alone and you have that time to read the book and you go through and there are things on religion, it may give you something to think about. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to sway anybody to believe anything or another, but there are a lot of interesting stories in this world that you may not have heard, is all I'm saying. But in my view, in this world that we've created, he is a neutral being. And the four horsemen are his generals and are tasked with keeping neutrality. And eventually the listener will be the listener in the scheme of things, because this is the third listener. Okay. So if you look at that, at most, you've got 240 years worth of listener that you've had. You know what I mean? Between grandfather, father, and now son, at most, you could have about 240 years. You know what I mean? If everybody lived to 80, But that being said, in the state of religion and talking about gods and deities and, spirits and demons, that's a very short amount of time, comparatively speaking to when religions have started. So the listener is an outlier and is which we get into all that. We get into the backstory for this grandfather, how he became the original listener. Book 0 will be out within the next 2 books, and that'll be a backstory to the grandfather. So we're really excited about that, and the one-off about his father. So we're excited about that too. But so you've got these. going into religion, you have to be careful. You have to be careful about stepping on people's toes, careful about their opinions. I'm not. I am not bashful about bringing things up. I feel like we should talk about them, because like I said, these things that you read are between you and I. When you read them, you sit down, it's a private moment. You can even push me out of the equation, because it's you in your chair, or you on your couch. You've got a nice, tumbler you're drinking out of, or you're drinking some wine, or hanging out, you're listening to some music, the kids are asleep, whatever, what have you. But it's your moment to look at these interesting tales and decide whether you want to, they're interesting, or you have no interest in that god or deity. But I don't give you enough to where you have to dig into it if you don't want to. You know what I'm saying? I know that this may be what you disagree with, but it's good for the story. The tale is good. Like the Lucifer is the easiest one because everybody wants to paint him as a bad guy every time. So Addie gets involved with what we call the Sin War later on in the series. And we bring Lucifer in because Lucifer is trying to keep neutrality because he has no clue that things are not going the way that they're supposed to. So the listener is an outlier and is a neutral being as well. And it's looked at like he's stepping over his bounds. He's breaking the neutrality. He's choosing sides, which, may or may not be the case, but that's how Lucifer views it. Therefore, the four horsemen view it that way. And now it's not only Addie against the sins and all the other bad shit going on in the world. Now you've got the four horsemen involved. And a young listener that has no idea who he is basically or anything to do with his powers is just learning what it is to be the listener is not going to stand against the likes of death that have been around since the beginning of time. So it's a very exciting thing. I've always disliked the Supermans of the comic universe. I mean, Clark's cool. His story's cool, but when you add an overly powered hero, like the Sentry, you add an overly powered hero to the mix. I don't give a shit who you are. You should not be able to go toe to toe with the Hulk in his angriest form. You know what I mean? There's just no way. You've only been out like 20 years, bro. The Hulk's been around a real long time. I just don't see it happening. So,
oh, you mean this guy?
That guy right there. You're not going toe to toe with that guy. I mean, I especially, World War Hulk. I mean, the dude was a monster.
Favorite book ever.
Right? You don't get to walk up to the Hulk and be like, we're just going to throw down. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm not buying it. But anyway, so I don't believe in the overpowered hero. I believe Banner's character has flaws, which makes it interesting. And then, for them to come out and say he knew he was the Hulk the whole time was an incredible way to write the story. But then you're like, okay, well, now you've got Banner's dead and all that's left is the Hulk. And then all of a sudden Banner's back to life. A lot of interesting things with quid pro quos and whatnot with the Hulk. But I don't think you should have a all-powerful hero. It takes away until we got Doomsday, you were like, oh, well, Supes is going to bust anybody, you know what I mean, that doesn't have kryptonite. He's just going to bust everybody up. He's faster than the Flash. And then they're like, well, they came to a draw. Or, the Flash won one. The Flash won one because you gave him one because the fans were like, what? You know what I mean? So we have to get to this point where we're writing realistic scenarios. Not that a comic is always got to be realistic, but if I write you an overpowered hero, you have no fear of the outcome. It's always, oh, well, he's got it. I don't ever want you to feel like Addie's got it. Because I put him through hell. Like, I put him through horrendous hell. And he does have amazing bright points in his story. Amazing bright points and shining lights to show people how awesome it is to have a great anti-hero. That they can come out of that shell and show themselves to be the hero they should be. but you can't force a character to be something that they're not. And I find as I'm writing, there are other characters in his party that are more hero than he is. You know what I'm saying? It's not that he's a bad person, but Addie weighs, the scales. Is it worth it? Is it worth my time? Because what we don't think about as we're going through the listener, a lot of people have been like, holy cow, I never thought about that. And we bring it up in the first book when Senior smashes the glass in the bathroom. There are always voices. Therefore, you are always listening. They can't cut it off. It's like Jean Grey or, Professor Xavier, always being able to hear everybody around them. Well, the listener can't cut it off, So there's always somebody. And if you think that there were times when a listener ignored people, that's probably a fact. There's probably times when spirits or, something came to ask for help. And, the listener's job is to do just that, to listen and to decide whether to assist or not, which brings up the neutrality of it. Just because you come, you and your husband were both murdered, and you come to the listener and you want the listener to exact revenge for you because you can't pass into the next realm because you're so pissed off and angry, doesn't mean he has to do it. You know what I mean? Some terrible things happen. Some dude killed a bunch of kids, but there's also some other crazy things going over here. He can only be so many places at one time. And we bring up those conundrums because I don't want an answer for you. I don't want to give you an out in the book I write, because it's easy for you to look at a one situation. If I give you one and you're like, oh yeah, I know what I would do. You really though? You really know how you would react in a particular situation?
You don't know until the situation's already upon you.
Absolutely. We had a lot of fun writing a mini story about the listener dealing with a werewolf, which it will be published, but it was a lot of fun because we get into the fact that Addie can traverse the realms, so he can literally, he could be in Tennessee and the next minute be in California if he so chose. And all those things had to make sense, though. They had to tie into some form of religion or something that involved Native American mythology. There is no magic in the listener. I think that's so important for people to know. Anything that we use in the listener has been written. It is literally, with the exception of the listener himself, with that character and his abilities. Everything else has been written somewhere in a holy book or an unso holy book. All these things. A lot of people believe that items carry power, names carry power, faith carries power. We bring all those things up in the listener because I wanted to bring it to a down-to-earth level that if I quote something out of the Bible, not everybody will know it. But if you do, it's very interesting to you. If I quote something out of the Quran, it's interesting to you. It's not something that people would... I mean, I don't have anything out of the Quran. I'm just using it as an example. Mm-hmm. But there are texts that give us so many interesting things. There's a particular fleece that lots of people have talked about for a really long time. Those are neat things to me. I felt like I said, with it being what it is and the title of the book and where the original stories were coming from that I modified and changed, I wanted the stories to be told again and the stories to be heard again. I think one thing that I found very interesting recently was Moana. I think Moana was an incredible film, and I think their portrayal of Maui was awesome. But I think the coolest thing was they involved the fish hook.
Mm-hmm.
In every single, I think there's 4 different religions that talk about Maui. Every one of them, there's a fish hook. I'm not saying I added the vagina with teeth that killed him. I just think it's really interesting. You know what I mean? You didn't know a vagina with teeth killed Maui in a certain religion, but it did to them, you know. And to bring that up is interesting. You know what I'm saying?
Women are always killing us.
Oh gosh, that's not where I was going with that. But you know, there are things that we don't talk about. You know what I mean? Like you could talk about David and Goliath to somebody, and they would have no idea that didn't practice, you know, Christianity or didn't grow up with Christianity. You know, so it's like,
and didn't watch that animated show before they went to church every Sunday.
Absolutely, you know. So
Davey,
you know, a lot of our main villains come from different religions and different mythoses and different places. So it's very fun for people to go, holy shit, that's so cool. How did you create that? And I'm like, dude, I updated that. You know what I mean? That was a story you hadn't heard before. And that's what's so much fun for me, is to find all these things and to twist them and warp them to fitting in the world that we've created. You know, I mean, you could be walking down the road and Thor just like reaches through the fabric of reality and pulls you into another realm. You know, it's interesting to me. You know, the idea of bringing back these stories that people haven't heard before, and even educating myself in things that I had no clue about, you know, or where certain things came from. You know, we go into the, you know, the skinwalkers and stuff, and, you know, wendigos and all that fun stuff. I knew those, but I didn't know that like werewolves were like a Celtic Scots type of thing. That's where that originated from. We go into all that. You know, we go into vampires. You know, I go into, you know, really cool things like I don't know. I'm giving you a lot right now, but there's a certain Ripper in the UK a while back that I bring into the story, because once again, when you're bringing into gods and deities and, you know, mythology and stuff, there's nobody tell me I can't, which is the most fun part about it. Well, that doesn't make sense. Okay. Well, it may not make sense to you, but it's very interesting that people that focus on these things and learn about these things, you know, not everybody.
Person from the UK appeared in an original episode of Star Trek too.
There, yeah. See. I'll have to ask Kyle about that. That's his jam. I was a Star Wars guy. I didn't do much Star Trek. That's his jam. I'll have to ask him, and he'll think that's funny, so I'll bring it up to him. But you know, I've tried to create these things that draw different people to them. Like their issue 0 also deals with Addie's joining the military. Okay. He was drafted, didn't have a choice. A lot of people dealt with that. You know, not so many people nowadays, but people before have dealt with that. You know, being there's actually a picture of Les on the back of my book, which I think is very interesting as well. A lot of people have asked me who it was. That is Les, my Uncle Les. But anyway, so when he joined the military, like I said, it wasn't by choice. It was something he had to do. So killing people was not something Les felt like he was doing for the country. It was something he had to do. It was just like breathing air. He had to do it to survive. That's what he did. So we get into a lot of that, you know, in the comic book about what Addie is going through, why he's in the military. You know, did he have a choice to join the military? You know, one of the biggest things was, are you really going to tackle racism in a comic book? And I was like, yeah, why not? You know, I'm tackling religion. I could sure as hell go into racism, you know, because it happened. I don't touch any of that stuff. And that's the most fun about it. I don't touch any of the personal stuff. The racism, all that, it all happened. Those were true events. It wasn't stuff that I didn't have to spice it up to make it interesting, or I wanted you all to feel this character. And the more, I'm trying to think of the word to use, the more intimate you are with Addie, the more you can feel every situation in the book. You know, yes, we go into a Mythbusters almost type of deal with hunting demons and monsters throughout the world. That's fine. But there's always so much truth written into these tales that I write about. You know, they always talk about how there's some speck of truth in every story you hear. You know, I bring up all that stuff. You know, one of the things that we brought up that Heather and I got, she's behind me. She's also my editor. My wife is my editor of my book, reads everything that comes out first. And I love her to pieces, but she's a grammar Nazi, and I'm glad she is. But there are things that we touch on that even she was like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, you know, we have two kids. I have a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I get into things that generally aren't touched in comic books. You know, Todd McFarlane said it once. You know, he was like, I do it because it needs to be done. The stories needed to be written. I felt like they fit with Spawn. That's what I wanted to do. And I feel like that is the most epic thing you could possibly do to yourself. You know, you see all these artists that stick true to what they want and the designs they want to do. This is what I want to write. This is what I want you to read. Because if I feel it, you're going to feel it. You know, and the like things that eat children or kill children, I don't shy away from them. If the stories say it, I mean, I do a whole. We're going to do some really interesting things. Put it that way. I'm gonna give my horse away, and Kyle or Kevin is going to beat me up. So, anyway, I mean, that's all I've got, man. I'm pretty. I
could almost hear Kevin grinding his teeth through this entire chat.
Yeah, I feel like that whooping is coming. But I wanted to give everyone enough to understand what they're walking into. I've given hints. I haven't given away the cow just yet. Plenty of hints. But I'm an open book. That's a funny thing to say, but I'm an open book. So if anybody has any questions about their listener, I'll tell you. I'm more than happy to talk to people on Facebook, social media, Twitter, whatever. You know what I mean? I'm learning how to use Twitter and Instagram and stuff. I'm not a big social media guru. I'm learning, so feel bear with me if I'm a little behind on those kind of things. But Facebook is up all the time, just because it's the easiest way for me to contact people and people to contact me. But you know, Will mentioned it. You can go to www.thelistenercomics.com. I tend to put stuff on there, and also www.thelistener.xyz. I update that as well when I get the opportunity. I'm a little bit behind on the XYZ because it is the older website, and the .com is easier for people. Not many people do a .xyz. They do a .com, whole different animal. But there's a lot to come. There's a whole lot to come in this world. I'm very excited. Very, impressed by our team. I'm very thankful for our team. I'm thankful for Will. Will's been super cool to me. Read the first book before the first book was even done. Read it when it was sideways. I'm really, really thankful.
Took me a day and a half to figure out how to read it straight.
I'm really thankful for everybody involved. I'm thankful for the amazing friends I have in this business that have come out and been like, you can do this. I would like to tell everybody, though, from the bottom of my heart, you can. You absolutely can. All these great writers and all these great artists, they just needed that one break. That's all they needed. I'm not saying I'm a guru at this or anything like that, but I've got an amazing group of people behind me. They're telling me I can. And with all those people behind me, I'm here to tell you, you can as well. Anybody can. You just have to put your heart to it and your mind to it, and have realistic expectations about yourself and the situation that you're putting yourself in. If I didn't have a loving wife that worked full time right now, I definitely wouldn't be able to do this for a living right now. But in the future, I'm hopeful. I'm very grateful for all the feedback we've gotten, all the people that have purchased books. I'm thankful to James Hull and his store over in the UK. They're getting an amazing cover by Kyle Willis for book 2. This is my first book. It is. It is not my first story I've written, but it is my first published book. And to have such a large outcry was unexpected. I mentioned that. And it's incredibly heartwarming, and it'll lift you up to a place you couldn't even imagine being before.
Oh, for sure.
There are times when, we talk about fans on a few podcasts. Fans will change your life astronomically. You may not sell a book for 3 days, 4 days, but when a fan comes in and tells you you've done something good and they appreciate it, it will change your whole aspect on everything. I write for myself and my family and my friends, but I think everything I write is almost a love letter to the fans and the people that have enjoyed this and the people that have pushed me to continue doing it. I think I put the book out to 15 people when we first got it done. And that was the make or break. I sent it to people I didn't even know.
Like me.
Yeah, to get their opinions. I mean, I didn't even know. And that's the scariest part. You're treading in water because your friends and family, we may think they're honest with us, but they love us. You know what I mean? They do. They love you and they want to help you and they want to support you. But when those reviews start coming back, man, and they're fire, they light it under you and they push you to new heights. I couldn't be more thankful to Will and to every podcast we've been on. We're about to start doing more podcasts here shortly. I think we're on like 8 more this month, and then we're doing our own podcast too. So we're very excited. We're going to make sure we pull Will on for our game nights and stuff. So if you're a fan of Mr. Pace, make sure you keep up because we're gonna wear him out a little bit.
It's going to be CromCon all over again.
Oh man, we enjoy his company, and I'll drop a tidbit for you. A parting tidbit this evening. We all know Phil. We love Phil. Phil is on the team for my second book. Just so you guys got that little tidbit, and that came from here first with Mr. William Pace. No one else has heard that yet. So I'm really excited about that and excited to tell you guys on his show. Phil is an amazing human being. We'll also be working with David Acampo for that secondary book. Super stoked. And then we're also working with a couple other people to get that situated. I don't want to drop too many names because a lot of these guys have got other projects they're working on at the same time. So look forward to a secondary book in the Listener this year. So we're building our universe. So you have the Listener, and then you'll have the secondary book, all from Cowabunga Comics. And with that, I appreciate you, Will. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
And on top of that, there is also the Listener group on Facebook.
There is. And you guys can get on there. Fun thing about the Listener group is if you ask anybody on there to shoot the shit, everybody on our team is on there. I think with the exception of Gabby because she's not a big social media person. But you'll get to see plenty of Gabby as well. She's a lot of fun. But yeah, you can message anybody on there. We'll always answer. I know Kyle's on there a lot. I'm on there a lot. Kevin's on there a lot. A bunch of our guys have weird schedules and work a lot though. And, that was one of the things that we had to accept when we were pulling these amazing creators, into our team was, hey, look, we're busy a lot. And, like Marissa Pope, Marissa's doing so much work and it's incredible. She's coming up on, working with DeBalfo and whatnot. She's doing really, really good. And her schedule is slam packed. That says a lot for a new artist coming out these days. You know what I mean? So we're really excited at her success. Super glad to have her on book 2. Amazing cover for book 1. She did a cover with Neil on it. That was a lot of fun. So we're ready for book 2. We're ready for Adam Fields to come back. He's doing really well right now. He's got a lot of projects of his own going on right now.
Always.
So, yeah, super busy dude. So if you don't see anything from our artists and stuff or myself, it's just because we're real busy. But we do go out of our way to make sure we answer questions, any messages we get to the pages. Like I said, no one's ignoring you. We're always listening. It's just a lot of work right now. We're literally, myself am on every team in the listener. So we have 3 projects going on right now. Which is absolutely insane to me. 4 projects technically. Oh Lord, there was a 4th one. So yeah, 4 projects technically, and I'm writing all of them. So I'm really excited about that. And we're really excited to bring you guys into the world of listener. And if you shoot good buddy William Pace, some comments, we'll make sure we answer those. And if there's anything that we can do for you, just let us know. We're really excited about the indie community right now. And if you've got a book, you want to shoot the shit with me, let me know. If you have questions about writing a book, you want to just talk, hang out, we'll be starting a podcast for the listener this week coming up. And that'll be with me and Kyle Willis. The first one's going to be Thursday night at 8 EST. Next week, we'll make sure we get that all shared out to you guys. But yeah, man, that's what I've got for this evening, Will. I appreciate you so much for having me. Hope I didn't talk your ear off too much.
No, not too much. I just kept like grabbing stuff and throwing it in front of the camera. Oh, that reminds me. Oh, that reminds me.
That's right. That's right. Well, now you got
the thing I didn't tell you with the spec stuff is when I worked at KB, I started speccing on the original line of Barbie superheroes.
Yes, sir.
And some of these are worth a crap ton of money.
I have a whole set. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
That's the Bruce Timm one, and then of course Wonder Woman. These are the original 3.
Isn't there a they added Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and somebody else, didn't they? I have upstairs.
I got them all.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Most of them. And I got excited one night when I was watching Comic Book Men on A&E that a couple of women went into Kevin's store with some of these.
Yeah.
And they kept some, but they sold a bunch at like almost, 75 or $100 a whack. And I'm like, I will sell these in a heartbeat.
Absolutely, man. Keep that Bruce Timm though. That's a good one.
I got the Bruce Timm Art Germ variant on the Supergirl cover. So
very cool. That's a serious book, man.
Oh yeah. I just want to remind everybody because I am also available on ageofradio.org. So as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to be downloading the audio version of this, and it'll go up there. So anybody that's listening to this on Age of Radio, come over to Creators Outlet on YouTube, and you can see the cool images and that cowabunga of a commercial that was made for the listener. So until next time, we're gonna let Dustin get back to work and back to the family, and we will talk to him very soon because, as he likes to say, he is always listening.